You pay $200 for a German chef's knife. It is made of surgical steel, computer-designed, and endorsed by famous television chefs. In the first few weeks, it glides through a tomato as if it were not there. But then, something happens. That razor edge disappears. Cutting an onion becomes an effort. In 6 months, it can no longer cut a sheet of paper. You sharpen it, but the magic never fully returns. Now, imagine a katana forged 500 years ago in a dark Japanese workshop using only a hammer, fire, and water. A blade that has seen battle, cut through armor, and been passed down through 15 generations. And today, in 2025, that same blade, never having been sharpened by a modern machine, can still cut a strand of silk that falls on it. What is going on here? How can 500-year-old technology so humiliatingly outperform the pinnacle of modern engineering? The answer is not in the steel. It is in wisdom. Medieval Japanese blacksmiths understood principles of metallurgy that modern industry has chosen to ignore in the name of profit and mass production. In this video, we will uncover the 7 secrets of katana forging that make it an almost eternal blade. And in the end, you will understand the uncomfortable truth about why your modern knives are designed, from the outset, to fail. But before we dive in, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt betrayed by an expensive tool? That chef's knife that promised professional performance, but now mashes tomatoes instead of slicing them? Or maybe you have a pocket knife that loses its edge if you cut anything harder than a piece of tape. It is a universal frustration. We spend our hard-earned money on products that promise quality but deliver planned obsolescence. If you have ever looked at a dull knife in your kitchen and thought they do not make things like they used to, press the like button. You are not imagining things. They really do not. By liking this, you tell the algorithm to share this knowledge with more people who are tired of disposable products. Now, let us step into the smoke and fire of the master blacksmith's workshop. Secret number 1. Impure steel, the soul of the blade, tamahagane. The first flaw in modern thinking is our obsession with purity. We want stainless steel, surgical steel, perfectly uniform metals without flaws. A katana blacksmith would laugh at that. For him, perfection was not born of purity, but of the mastery of impurity. The process began with the creation of the steel itself in a huge clay furnace called a tatara. For 3 days and 3 nights, the blacksmiths fed the tatara with tons of iron sand and charcoal. It was an exhausting, almost religious ritual. The result was not a uniform block of steel, but a spongy, heterogeneous mass called kara. Within this kara, there were different types of steel. Parts with a high carbon content, incredibly hard but brittle, were called tamahagane, and parts with a low carbon content were softer and more flexible. The master blacksmith, with a single glance and the sound of his hammer, selected these pieces. He did not see them as good or bad, but as components with different properties, just as a painter selects his colors. The hard, brittle steel would become the cutting edge. The soft, flexible steel would become the backbone of the sword, capable of absorbing impacts. Your modern chef's knife is made from a single piece of uniform steel. It is a one-size-fits-all solution. The katana, from its inception, was a composition of different materials, each chosen for a specific function. The genius was not in eliminating the impurities, but in understanding and organizing them. Secret number 2. The fold, forging perfection from chaos. Here is the most famous, yet least understood secret. The blacksmith would take pieces of mahogany, heat them to white hot, and hammer them into a single block. Then he would cut the block almost in half and fold it back on itself, hammering it back into a single piece. And he would repeat this, and again, 12 to 16 times. This was not for show. It was a brutal process of purification and homogenization. With each fold, the impurities in the steel were squeezed out and expelled in a shower of sparks. The carbon, which was unevenly distributed, was spread evenly throughout the piece. A single fold creates 2 layers, 2 folds, 4, 10 folds, 1,024 layers. 16 folds create more than 65,000 layers. Think about that. Your chef's knife has 1 layer. The katana has tens of thousands. This laminated structure is what creates the famous grain pattern on the blade's surface, the jihada. But more importantly, it creates an internal microstructure of impressive complexity. These thousands of interwoven layers of hard and soft steel give the blade a resilience that modern steel simply cannot replicate. It can flex under stress without breaking, but the edge remains incredibly hard. Secret number 3. Laminated construction, the sandwich blade. Folding the steel was just the beginning. The real genius was in how different types of steel were assembled. The blacksmith did not use only folded high-carbon steel for the entire blade. That would make it too brittle. Instead, he created a sandwich of steel. The most common technique was kobuse. The blacksmith would take the block of folded high-carbon steel, hagane, which would become the edge, and shape it into a U shape. Inside that U, he would insert a core of soft, low-carbon steel, shingane. Then he forged the 2 metals together until they became a single bar of steel with a soft core and a hard skin. What does this mean? It means the blade had the best of both worlds, an incredibly hard outer jacket capable of being sharpened to a very fine angle and maintaining that edge, and a soft, flexible inner core that acted as a shock absorber, taking the force of impacts and preventing the hard edge from shattering. Your chef's knife is a single piece of metal. If it is hard enough to maintain its edge, it is brittle. If it is flexible enough not to break, it is too soft to maintain its edge. The katana has no such compromise. It is both at the same time. Secret number 4. Differential tempering, the soul of fire and water. This is the most critical, dramatic, and beautiful step in the entire process. This is where the blade gains its soul. The blacksmith covered the blade with a secret mixture of clay, charcoal powder, and other ingredients called yakibatsuchi. But he did not apply it evenly. He painted a thick layer on the spine and sides of the blade, and a very thin layer along the cutting edge. Then, under the cover of night, so he could judge the color of the metal accurately, he heated the blade to the exact temperature, about 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, the color of a sunrise. In one quick, precise motion, he plunged it into water. The magic happens in a fraction of a second. The cutting edge, protected only by a thin layer of clay, cools almost instantly. This extreme temperature change forces the steel molecules to reorganize into an incredibly hard and dense crystalline structure called martensite. It is one of the hardest materials that can be created with steel. Meanwhile, the spine of the blade, insulated by the thick layer of clay, cools much more slowly. This creates a softer, more flexible crystalline structure called pearlite. The result is a blade with two distinct personalities in the same piece of steel. A cutting edge with a Rockwell hardness of 60 HRC, harder than most axes, and a spine with a hardness of 40 HRC capable of flexing and absorbing shocks. The visible line separating these two zones is the hamon. It is not decoration. It is the fossil record of this violent moment of creation, the visible proof of the sword's soul. Your chef's knife is tempered uniformly, a mediocre compromise between hardness and flexibility. The katana refuses compromise. Secret number 5. The natural curvature, the shape born of fire. You might think that the katana's elegant curve is hammered by the blacksmith. It is not. The curve is a natural and beautiful byproduct of differential tempering. When the hot blade is plunged into water, the cutting edge cools first and contracts. The spine is still hot and expanded. This tension between the contraction of the edge and the expansion of the spine forces the blade to curve forward. Then, as the spine cools and contracts, it pulls the blade back, creating the graceful and permanent curve known as sori. The shape of the sword is not imposed. It is born from the process itself. And this curve is not just aesthetic. It makes the katana an incredibly efficient cutting weapon, allowing the blade to slide through the target rather than simply cutting straight through. It is physics in action, created by a process that is part science, part art. Secret number 6. Polishing, revealing the soul of the blade. For a Western blacksmith, once the blade is forged and tempered, the job is 90% complete. For a katana master, the work is only halfway there. Polishing a katana is not like sharpening a knife. It is a meditative process that can take weeks, using a series of progressively finer water stones, some more valuable than gold. The polisher is not just sharpening the blade. He is sculpting the final geometry of the edge and revealing the inner beauty of the steel. He reveals the hamon, the temper line, and the jihada, the grain pattern of the folds. A good polish can transform a great blade into a masterpiece. A bad polish can ruin months of work by the blacksmith. The result is an extremely complex edge geometry. It is not a simple V like on your knife. It is a convex edge known as hamaguri-ba, which looks like the shell of a clam. This shape is incredibly strong. It has more meat supporting the final edge, making it much more resistant to chipping and curling than a hollow or flat V edge. That is why a katana can cut through hard materials without damaging the edge, while your chef's knife may dent if it hits a bone. Secret number 7. The philosophy of shokunin, the pursuit of perfection. This is the final and most important secret. The katana was not just a product. It was the physical manifestation of the philosophy of shokunin, the craftsman who has a social obligation to work as best as possible for the general welfare of the people. The blacksmith was not just making a weapon. He was engaged in a spiritual practice. He purified himself before entering the forge. He prayed to the kami, the spirits of Shintoism. He saw steel as a living entity he was helping to bring into being. His name, his honor, and his soul were in every blade he created. Doing mediocre work was not an option. It was a moral failing. Compare that to the mindset of a modern factory. The goal is to produce as many units as possible in the shortest amount of time at the lowest cost to maximize quarterly profits. The factory optimizes for efficiency. The shokunin optimized for perfection. So if these techniques are so superior, why is your kitchen knife not made this way? The answer is brutally simple: time and money. Forging a single katana in the traditional way takes a team of artisans months. The tatara process takes days. The folding, rolling, tempering, polishing, each step is labor-intensive and requires a level of skill that takes a lifetime to master. A katana made today by a licensed master in Japan can cost $10,000 to $50,000 or more. The Industrial Revolution changed the game. In the mid-19th century, the Bessemer process enabled the mass production of cheap steel. Manual forges were replaced by giant rolling mills that could produce more steel in a day than a tatara could in a century. The skill of the craftsman was replaced by the precision of the machine. The goal was no longer to create the best blade possible. It was to create a blade that was good enough at the lowest possible price. Stainless steel, invented in the early 20th century, was the nail in the coffin. It did not rust, which was great for marketing and low-maintenance kitchens. The fact that it generally does not hold an edge as well as high-carbon steel was considered a small price to pay for convenience. The modern industry does not want you to have a knife that lasts 500 years. It wants you to buy a new knife every few years. It thrives on replacement, not permanence. They have created a cycle. The knife becomes dull, you get frustrated, you buy an electric sharpener that destroys the geometry of the blade, the knife gets even worse, and finally you give up and buy a new knife. It is a system designed for profit, not longevity. You do not have to spend $10,000 to have a blade that works, but you need to understand the principles of the katana and look for them in modern knives. First, ignore surgical stainless steel. Look for knives made of high-carbon steel or tool steel such as aogami super or shirogami, also called blue or white paper steel. Yes, they can rust if you do not take care of them. This is a sign that the steel is reactive and pure, capable of achieving extreme hardness. Dry your knife after use. It is a small price to pay for superior performance. Second, look for laminated construction. Many Japanese knife makers today still use the sanmai technique, which is a version of kobuze. They create a sandwich with a super hard high-carbon steel core and softer stainless steel sides. You get the cutting edge of a katana with the low maintenance of a modern knife. Third, understand edge geometry. Avoid knives with an obvious hollow edge. Look for a convex edge or a flat, thin V. Learn to sharpen your knives on whetstones, not electric sharpeners. Sharpening on stones allows you to control the angle and preserve the geometry of the blade. Fourth, buy from the craftsman, not the corporation. Instead of buying a famous German brand from a department store, look for small knife makers, especially in Japan. You can often buy a knife handmade by a craftsman for a price similar to a high-end factory knife. You will be buying a tool with a soul. The katana is more than a weapon. It is a physical reminder that patience trumps haste, that complexity trumps forced simplicity, and that the pursuit of perfection has a value that transcends time and money. Modern industry has sold us the lie of convenience. The lie that faster is better and that cheaper is smarter. Your dull chef's knife is not your fault. It is the fault of a philosophy that chose profit over craft and quantity over quality. The medieval Japanese blacksmith did not have profit spreadsheets. He had honor. He had no production deadlines. He had a lifetime to perfect his art. He taught us that the best objects are not made by machines, but by human hands, guided by a deep understanding of materials and an unwavering respect for the process. If you are tired of a disposable world, if you believe that things should be made to last, then join us. Sign up, because every week we are rediscovering the wisdom they tried to make us forget. Comment below. Which of the 7 secrets surprised you the most? I read every response. The truth is that your kitchen knife and the 500-year-old katana are not just different objects. They represent 2 different paths for humanity. One path is one of rapid consumption and easy disposal. The other is the way of truth, the Shinro way, where value is measured in generations, not fiscal quarters. The knowledge to choose the right path has not been lost. It is waiting in the smoke of the forge, in the sound of the hammer on steel.